Streaming live from Treaty 1 territory in the heartland of the Métis Nation, where the great waterways meet and the heart of Turtle Island. We have guests from the territory of Toronto, which is grounded in the Treaty of a Dish with One Spoon and is home to some of the most diverse population in Canada. We also have a guest living on unceded Mi'kmaq territory. We have a guest from the other side of the planet of the beautiful island of Singapore. I'm super excited to host the 4th Nuit Blanche Talk Series, Public Engagement with Outdoor Festivals. With this incredible lineup of people, which includes Lindsay and Cory, the Executive Director of Nocturne in Halifax, Dr. Ho Sue Fern, who's an Assistant Professor in Arts and Culture Management at the Singapore Management University and is a key researcher at Singapore Night Festival. We have Jeanne Holmes, who's Acting Programming Manager for City Cultural Events at the City of Toronto. We have Ashley McKenzie-Barnes, Curator and Creative Director and past Curator of Nuit Blanche. And finally, we have Sage Paul, the Artistic Director of Indigenous Fashion Week, Toronto, and one of the artists for Nuit 2020. We've had some really exciting and introspective talks so far, and I'm really enthusiastic to delve into the possibilities of outdoor festivals to better understand how to produce multiple ways of relating to natural and urban landscapes. Each speaker will share strategies from their own festivals and locales to expand on contemporary discussions on engagement and presentation, which are both responsive to its environment and responsible to its communities. This cross-cultural exploration of outdoor festivals builds on Nuit's talks as a platform for future-oriented dialogues on collective and public activations. Our past talks have reflected on the status of monuments, the struggle for performing arts as we continue to have to social distance, discussions around the necessity of reconfiguring audiences and the processes of public participation in art. Tonight's speakers will consider the ways in which each massive public exhibition and events are moving towards new models and how they will continue to engage the public. I've been watching on a global scale to best understand how to process and reflect on the shifting large-scale exhibitions and their existing models. We look at Art Basel Hong Kong as the first, followed by the Frieze Art Fair, the Singapore, I always want to say biannual, but it's Biennale, and the Sydney Biennale, and the new Pandemic Art Fair. I know when I connected with Sue and her team at the Singapore Night Festival, there was so much discussion around how to think about public art in a post-COVID world and what were festivals like ours going to do moving forward. We look at the fashion industry, past exhibitions at Harbourfront, large-scale commercial curatorial projects to understand how to relate to the feeling of watching live performances and how to bring that energy into the virtual realm. At the same time, I've been watching other Nuit Blanches to see how they adjust or shift. And of course, a personal fave, Nocturne, which Glam is curating an international exhibition for its festival this October. So I'm really excited to have all of you here. And I thought we'd start off with the first question. What's at stake if we cancel our events? How does it impact the city we live in? And if we don't cancel, how do we shift our current model? So I was thinking maybe Lindsay, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, well, our festival is in 2 weeks from now, so it's very tense right now because actually in Eastern Canada, we don't really have that many COVID cases right now, yet we're still fairly locked down, and there's obviously still a lot of regulations around that. So for us, it was just, we never really wanted to cancel ever. We knew that there would be a way that we could be nimble about it and flexible, and Nocturne looks different every year anyways. So we kind of leaned into it, but we really trusted actually our curator, who's Lindsay Dobbin this year, who's a Mohawk, Irish, Acadian artist living here in Chibuktuk. And when I first talked to them about what do we do about all of this, they really were like, you know, I think we need to trust artists. I think we need to support artists and find a way that we can move forward that doesn't feel too like plan B, like that it feels intentional and it feels like we made space for that.
And so do you feel that if you guys, had you canceled, how would that impact Halifax?
greatly. I think we've seen a summer of no events almost, or very few like public events. And there was a lot of pressure, I think, because Nocturne is pretty flexible in that way. And we always occupy different spaces. There was a lot of hope that Nocturne could be the thing that brought people back out. And we are going to be that. We're also doing a lot of things virtually. And we've had to change the way that we work so that we could still bring what we want to bring to the city. And I think, I don't know yet because it's still 2 weeks away, but I think that actually what we've done is more than what we usually do. And I think it would have impacted the greatly to not have this, especially we're going into a winter and who knows what that brings for us. And it's just something that people look forward to. So we really wanted to make it happen.
Awesome. So I'm wondering if Sage, you want to talk a little bit about your guys's for Indigenous Fashion Week and how you feel about it and kind of where your mind's at.
We were supposed to take place live this past May. And so we halted and postponed quite early. As soon as COVID, everyone knew what was going to happen. We stopped pretty quickly. And the thing is, like, we didn't want artists to feel like we were just let's just go on Zoom and let's just do this. Because a lot of our designers they're fashion designers, they're bead artists, and they don't necessarily, we can't assume that they have the tools to be producing from home. And we just really wanted to give them that space and time. So we did put some thought into it. We watched what other people were doing and also really considered how to put fashion online, because when you see fashion online, it's very commercial. It is commercial when you go online, and Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto is really based about presenting fashion at an intersection of art, fashion, and culture. And so there was really no energy other than at the live event itself that felt like home. But canceling definitely wasn't on my radar. I'm sure at some point we spoke about it and we'd go back and forth, like, no, we can't do this. But it's a collective of 3 women, and we all have, we have other various projects, and it has transformed all of the work that we do. So we really had to think about what does this look like online, and we're doing it. It's happened really quickly still, even though we have given a lot of time. But at the end, it was really about creating a space for the designers and artists that we serve, and creating that space where there's still work. We do still have the marketplace, which is vital to craft and design communities. But we also are still creating an online presence for those artists come this November, which we're really excited, November 26th to 29th.
And so do you think, Sage, that how do you think it might have impacted some of the makers, especially because you guys were, 2 months out of your event, similarly to the Basel in Hong Kong and the Sydney Biennale. And so, the same thing, like we watched a lot of those events basically start canceling flights. People were advised not to come or were already there, like myself and others included, and then having to kind of quickly turn around, come home, and then watch all that exhibition just lay there dormant, and so, be excited to have Brooke on as one of the last speakers, kind of the digital pivot. But I think that there's something to be said about how does it affect the artists and the designers and the creators that are making that work?
That was one of the things that really hurt me, actually, because I knew that, because we are every 2 years, so designers put a lot of time into the collections that they are presenting at our festival. Some of them have been working on them for a couple of years, so it was really sad to think that they were right at that finish line, probably either just finishing up their collection or ready to put it on the stage. And then, of course, there were all the designers who were supposed to be in our marketplace that had inventory that were supposed to sell in Toronto, in the market here.
Oh, some of us have been saving. Like, I know if, people were like, oh, yeah, we got to save up all our money because, you just can spend too much. So everybody was getting ready. And then I was like, oh. Yeah.
It's like people save up for it, and that we have over 50 artists and designers in our marketplace, and to think that all of them had built up this inventory. I think we're very fortunate in our community, the Native community. I'm sure many other communities also, but there is a pretty strong connection online. So many designers are selling through Instagram. So I think they were able to sell their work through Instagram and through other platforms, and that now they're able to have work for this coming fall. But it was the designers who were presented live, where it was like, how do we do justice to the presentation of their work? And you know, they put a lot of trust into us to ship their work to us, and so that we could present it. Like, they were not going to see the models that it was going to be on, they weren't going to see the set or the lighting, and these are all like big curatorial kind of decisions that an artist would want to be a part of. And everything happened really quickly. A lot of it was like we were getting it up while we were discussing with the artists, but I think that was just about having that connection and those relationships with their communities, and knowing like we are in really weird times, and it's like, let's put our trust into this and do something that hopefully is really cool and that is not going to mimic real life, but I think will still bring that sense of joy and community, and that sense, that feeling that we get when we're all together.
Yeah, I mean, as one of the privileged few that's got to see a little teaser that's going to be embedded into the Nuit Live, you know, it's definitely exciting, and it's just so interesting because it's amalgamation of kind of art and fashion and land, and so it's got this like kind of interesting feeling to it. I'm thinking, Sue, it'd be really great if you want to talk a little bit about the Singapore Night Festival, and tell us a little bit about, because you guys did in fact cancel. No, yeah, for 2020, right? So maybe just start us there.
Yes. So the Singapore Night Festival, which I guess simply put would be Singapore's version of Nuit Blanche, and which has been taking place annually in the city centre since 2008. It was meant to happen at the end of August this year, but then a decision was made very early on to cancel it earlier in April. And this was because instead of having to deal with the uncertainty and to keep pivoting, the festival decided to take the time and the space to actually rethink about how to re-envision the festival, especially after 12 years of running as well. So what the festival team has done is to commission us to conduct 3 studies instead, 2 of which I'm involved in. One was to work with a group of students from the university that is based in the city centre as well, to do an envisioning study, to think about the relevancy of the program moving forward, particularly to youth as well. The other study that they decided to do was to think about how to enable the festival to have greater social impact. So that is being done with the Global Cultural Districts Network. And then the third one is a rebranding exercise that is currently being conducted by a PR agency. So unlike you guys, we've decided to cancel completely and to come back, I guess, stronger next year as well.
Yeah. And you want to talk a little bit about some of the impact that might have on the city, because you guys have a really large audience as well, because your event is super well attended.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
so I think about annually, the festival has about at least 500,000 visitors to a 2-weekend festival. And I think what's at stake is really the idea of public access and public engagement as well. I think particularly for a pragmatic kind of city where the arts is not always a priority for the population, I think what is lost here is really for the public to have the chance to have easy access to the arts and culture as well. So the festival scores very highly in terms of studies, in terms of its experiential and social value as well. And I think what the public actually really appreciates is that the festival is really an easy access point for them to access and experience the arts, particularly in unexpected spaces. So not in traditional arts venues, but really thinking about the arts as activating the city center, and really for them to go out and explore spaces within the city center as well.
Yeah, I think there's lots of overlap in terms of we had an extensive conversation with Sue and her slew of research assistants. So it's like, I know lots now, but I just feel like even in terms of the Nuit Blanche within the North American context, Nocturne, Art in the Open, some of the events that have been happening at Harborfront. There's also a really large one in Vancouver, which is totally slipping my mind. But I think that there are some really kind of key spots where this work is happening. And we see it not only within the kind of public exhibition realm, but even for the biennales or like the fairs, you know, having to kind of shift because they just have such large amounts of people moving through those spaces. And a lot of times some of those exhibitions want to take up public space in a different way, right? So it's not uncommon. Like if I think about Venice, you know, it's just one of those spaces where you see art interventions in and outside of all different kinds of spaces, you know, sometimes floating around in the canal. So Ashley, I was hoping you might talk a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing and the kind of, you know, you just did some work with the Harborfront. You've got a big commercial trail of activities happening. And so do you want to talk a little bit about some of that, how that has shifted and how you guys have had to do things a little bit differently?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think part of my programming and what I've done, and I think what I've done over the years is like you learn to pivot, and it's very similar to, you know, working, you know, being put in Scarborough, and like how do you facilitate something like Nuit Blanche in Scarborough using like an entirely different zone than what the downtown core is used to, right? Like using a mall, using a civic center, and using a Cineplex. And I think that same challenge for me in 2020 really appeared. You know, like I had done Kumba, that festival, which was a 1-month festival at Harborfront. And then Harborfront had come back and said, hey, we really want you and Trey to work together, and like Carte Blanche, here, you know, we'll give you a budget and you come up with this programming, but it's part of Harborfront.live. So having to think and restructure how you visit curatorial programming, how you revisit artist interaction with audiences, was a big thing. But then there was a lot of beautiful moments in that in terms of who I could work with, and the audiences I could reach and the type of partnerships I can make. And I think for me, the biggest thing is I'm personally not a fan of the all digital platform. I now be the first to say it. I am a real life person. I do like to be in, like, the reason I got into curating and coming from a creative direction role was that I like the feeling of being immersed, and I like the experience of seeing life-size art, and experiencing that one-on-one engagement with what I'm taking in, that artist's work. So I think, but like similar to what we did with Harborfront, we just wrapped up The Mic Is On, which was a 6-week series that I co-curated with Trey Anthony. It was finding that magical spot, which is in between the two. So having the speaker series, having the live events, speaking with an artist like Sean Theodore, who I was slated to bring down for AGO Massive earlier this year, and it didn't work out because Massive got canceled. And I said, well, how do we pivot? And he had just taken on a director role with Paris, Texas, LA, which was a gallery in LA. And he was really keen on bringing some of these artists up, and in a way that we couldn't probably do it if COVID wasn't happening. So, you know, being able to take these public art spaces in Harborfront Pavilion outside of the power plant in Harborfront, and do a lead up to the show through digital programming, through talks, through getting people excited to see the work that he was presenting, but through the connection of like a 1-hour conversation with him and delving through his creative practice, delving through what Afrofuturism is. Like those things, I think, are like the unique experiences we're able to give audiences now, where they can make a little bit more of a connection with the artist and the statements and their work and what they're trying to do. And then like the grand finale is, hey, look, surprise, we've put up some work in the pavilion at Harborfront, and now you can go see his work in real life. And it was super well received, and it's still up. It's up till, I think it was till October 1st, but they're extending it. But there's something for me that was a little bit more meaningful by going through that conversation and that dialogue with Sean Theodore, who is based in Philadelphia. And like had like the idea with AGO Massive is like we were gonna wrap elevators and we were gonna have his work all over the place, and like it would have been like spectacle and beautiful, and like his work, like I've been there a few times, and every time I go I see like they stop. It's jaw-dropping work. You stop, you cannot miss it. But there's something very different with the experience now that you've heard him speak and you've gone through that that I guess that trail of thinking with him. And even for me as a curator, I learned a lot more by having to stop, take it in, have a discussion, go through the pivot with him and go through the whole idea of how we want to present this to an audience. I learned so much more about his work than you know, had it just been like, let's get to it. So I think there's those things, like we're in the space of public art, you know, Jeanne, yourself, a lot of us here, where we work in the public art space, and there's a lot of room, there's a lot of canvases to consume because we're in non-traditional spaces. So I think it's, how do you find that happy medium, you know?
So Ashley, was it always a plan to have some of the work outside and some of the work inside, or was that one of the, yeah.
Yeah, no, like Harborfront.live was like, you're programming Harborfront.live. Like, and I'm like, I don't want to program something that's just a .live. Like I want something that, you know, you get excited about because you heard this person speak and you see their work. It just like, it just wasn't a medium that could just exist digitally. So I think Harborfront got really excited about the partnership, and we found some space. Again, that's the beauty of the public space. You can wrap a building, you can go on a pavilion, you can put up signs, you can do structures, you could do sculpture. That's the beauty of the space that, you know, some of us work in, that the canvas never closes, even if it's only 10 people a day who are allowed to see it. You know, if we were to go into a phase 1 again, and you can only see it between these hours, it's there. It's there for you at all hours of the day.
Awesome. Jeanne, I was hopeful you might, I mean, me and you are like spending copious amounts of time together. And so I was like laughing because I was like, oh, I feel like, are we just going to have the same wavelength and say the same things and be like, oh, so you have the floor, my dear.
Well, I mean, I think that the first question about the sort of ramifications of canceling an event, you know, I think we thought really long and hard about what it would mean, what kind of message it would send to cancel Nuit Blanche. You know, it's would be year 15, which is kind of a milestone. It's, you know, a anchor event in the sort of fall calendar of activity, and, you know, people really look forward to it. And I think the message about changing or canceling or not doing it at all would have been a really challenging conversation to have back when we had to make the decision in June when we announced. And, you know, up until June, we did a lot of talking around that. So, you know, I mean, I think for me, what is really, what I really think about with Nuit Blanche is that it's a city event. And I don't mean like a capital C city, although it is that, but like it's a small C city event that it's really about like the people being out on the streets, seeing work, occupying the financial district, taking over a shopping mall like Ashley flagged, or, you know, like transforming that public space. And so, you know, that losing that opportunity for group experience, we started to talk so much about what we could do that wouldn't be, you know, because we couldn't do the other thing, right? The idea of trying to kind of lean into the idea of being virtual or being digital. And, you know, I think the other part for us that is challenging was the fact that like there's so many people. In fact, that's a little bit of a criticism for folks about Nuit Blanche. Like we have 1 million plus people that come the night of Nuit Blanche, that 12-hour overnight, and it's just too risky in the current environment to do that. So to figure out ways to sort of shift that energy into something new was a big part, I think, of our conversation. I think also this idea of kind of finding the moments and expressing those moments, right? Like, you know, and to think about all the things that we don't usually have a chance to do, right? Like the idea of doing talks and podcasts and having those available year round, the opportunity to like deepen the experience that audiences have with the work that usually is just that one night that's ephemeral and then it's gone so quickly, and it's almost like it's a memory already, right? Like, did it really happen? You see the impact of the work as much as you see the work itself. And so to find those kind of ways to connect the people to the work that they might not necessarily be able to experience, and to be able to have those conversations all year long, right? So, you know, the talks and podcasts offer that more in-depth conversation. And then, you know, that some of the works that we're talking about doing that are digital or online, or, you know, taking an AR experience and positioning it in your backyard and having the opportunity to play with it a little bit or walk around it like you normally would, like those are the kind of experiences you would have in real life, but they're more intimate, right? Those kind of quieter one-on-one relationships that you get to have with the art, that is harder to do in a large group of people, but also still so powerful to be able to kind of recreate those in a digital format, or to allow you to have that experience kind of in the privacy of your backyard, or, you know, the Loblaws parking lot or whatever it is. Like those things still, to me, are so much a part of what that live experience is, even if it's not in that big collective moment, even if it's just that one-on-one connection that you're having. And it is always the special moment that happens, like that 7 o'clock on the night of Nuit Blanche moment, when suddenly the ideas that you've been talking about and the projects that you've been working on actually become live. And that moment of connection between the artist and the audience that happens, that to me is what's the most special thing about what Nuit Blanche is. And we're still having those moments in really nice ways.
Yeah, I had so much fun. I'm not going to lie today. I like blew up Shelley Nero's work, and I put it in front of the Toronto sign and in front of the City Hall. And it was just like, I was just killing myself laughing, because I was just like, I just love the way that you could just take up the space, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, and I think that, you know, same thing, you know, as soon as my kids played with Cousine's work, you know, they were holding it and spinning it around and taking pictures with it. And I think it's going to be a really interesting, although different, way to engage with artwork. I think it's actually going to still have that kind of exploration, discovery,
all of those things,
you know?
Yeah.
I hope so.
And
anyway.
you can still take your picture with it, which is also part of what Nuit Blanche.
Don't worry, folks, you can still get your selfie in. Yeah. So I was thinking, you guys all, like, I know I kind of gave you guys a few questions, but I was also like, a lot of you guys, I feel like each parts that you were talking about talked a little bit about hope and what that kind of future looks like, you know, and why should we kind of continue working in large scale festivals and exhibitions or events in various cities. So I'm wondering if you guys want to talk a little bit about, you know, why is it important? You know, why not just, you know, move on? Anybody?
I think, oh, go ahead.
I'm happy to say something there.
Yeah.
Who's speaking?
You can, Ash, if you want to start, and then we can just go boom, boom, boom.
So just so I'm clear, the question is why not move on, like move away from the festivals and the in real life experiences? Because for me, I think that this was a larger learning for a lot of us who are programmers and storytellers and facilitators and curators. It's just exactly what Jeanne was saying, which I was kind of echoing earlier, where you find the deepening of an experience as you're challenged to rethink how we position experiences for audiences. And I think that we've now, from at least in my understanding from what I've seen, where we're reaching wider audiences, we're allowing accessibility on a different scale, we're connecting with other parts of the world. We've now established that understanding of streaming, of technology, of reach, right? Of like reach and audience beyond what we were forced to imagine. And I think when you pair that with bringing back the magic and the beauty and the experience of in real life and structure and scale and experience on a different level, I think that you have that sweet spot. You have that spot that you can have that experience locally and then expand it to other parts of the world and other audiences. You can have an experience where it might not be accessible to a certain type of person, and then you can expand that reach. And I think you don't let go of the old. What we were doing wasn't broken. I think now it's just evolved, and there's so much beauty and appreciation in what we're doing. And when we eventually get back to that post-COVID, or whenever we get a vaccine, a year from now, 2 years from now, there will be a wider appreciation for the experiences, and we don't let that go. Like I said, I'm not much of one who loves digital programming, but I do, when it's something that I really want to engage with, I get in, I'll tune in, I'll go on a laptop or whatever. But there's also that understanding that we've suffered trauma from going through something like this. Like, a lot of us sit on our computers day to day from a 9 to 5 or whatever the hours are, and then you got to log back on to go party or get education or go to your next job or whatever it is. And there's loss there, right? We're experiencing a trauma by being forced to tune in this way. This isn't our natural nature of creators and social beings, and this isn't the natural way of how we want to experience art. So we can't walk away from it. So I think it's more understanding what our learnings are, and every time we evolve, every time we pivot, every time we're challenged to think differently, we create better. We create something more unique. And when the time comes back that we can reconvene and have in real life experiences, it's going to be that much stronger. But I don't think COVID happened for us to turn our backs on what we've been doing. I think it happened for us to reimagine what we can do in ways that are more acceptable and accessible, and even thoughtful in our approaches to what we're creating.
So you guys all jumped in, so I don't know which one. Let's see who wants to go.
I mean, I'm happy to jump in here. I mean, what people said that the music was dead when it started being recorded, and when the VHS was created, nobody was going to go to movies anymore, and all of those, like, DVD. There is a drive that brings us together, right? That makes people want to experience things in group environments, that want to have that collective moment to be together with things. And I'm with you, Ashley. I don't think this is the the new way, that it's the new normal that everybody is going to experience now. I think it's a path to get to whatever the next thing is. And people are pack animals. We want to be together, right? So this is a bit I think we're kind of, I feel like we're making the best of it, knowing ideally that there's going to be something else down the road. At least that's my hope. And I think that there's opportunity for us to continue to develop this as one stream of connection, right? It's one way for artists to connect with their audiences. It's one way for producers to present work, but it isn't going to be the only way. Touch wood.
I think, Sage, did you want to jump in there? I saw you smiling there.
Oh yeah, no, I just love, like, everyone keeps saying reimagine, and that's really what it is. Yeah, I think both Ashley and Jeanne have said it best, but like, we're social beings, and especially for Indigenous Fashion Week Toronto, like, we serve artists from all around the world, and so it's awesome to be able to connect with everyone in that way. But there really is nothing that compares to being in person. And many of the artists that we present, they're not based in cities; they're based on the land. So they have very different now than we do, and I can't wait for us to be able to be together again. But until then, I just think it is what it is. Let's reimagine what that future is going to look like when it comes. Yeah.
Yes, and I think maybe I'll add on. And like the rest, I really like what Ashley said about how the COVID is really a way to reimagine how things are being done. But I think we can't just move away from large-scale arts events, because I think apart from the value to audiences, I think these arts events are also very much about enabling local artist development and production, like what Sage said as well. So if I draw in the context of the Singapore Night Festival, for instance, I think what's unique about the festival is that it happens within a precinct with a very high concentration of art spaces from institutions like art schools and museums, but also artist workspaces as well. So it's really a cultural district where one can not not only consume art, but where arts creation and production happens. And I think that the festival is then a chance for not just the public to engage with the arts, but also I think based on studies that we've done, it's also for a chance, firstly, for artists to be inspired by the wonder of the art. So I quote one of the artists that we spoke to as well, which is really a chance for someone once a year to see monsters walking down the streets, and you never get that chance beyond the festival. And I think also it's also an opportunity for artists to work with public spaces, to open up public spaces for them to work with, and also for them to perform their craft to audiences that they are usually not able to reach on a regular basis as well. So I think these large-scale events are important for artist development as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's so crucial because I think when, you're thinking about doing those events, I mean, for me, my mindset's always intergenerational. So I'm always thinking like emerging, mid-career, established. I'm thinking about geographic locations. I'm thinking about representation. I'm thinking about who's in dialogue and conversation with. And I think about as somebody who's been fortunate enough to participate in those events, and then also reciprocal, do that and provide those opportunities for other artists. It's like, I think it's so incredibly important because it would be such a loss in terms of what we would be, what arts would not, or artists wouldn't have advantage to take to do that work, right? And I think that, it would be so disheartening to think about those artists not with those opportunities, right? Lindsay, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone has said, and I've just been kind of like jotting down notes about, I love this term of reimagine because we've been using the term of shift and pivot, but really what it is reimagining what we can be, both for the public, but I love the importance of artists within our work and within what we offer as an opportunity. And I think for Nocturne, when we were looking at what to do, I'm the same as Ashley. I need there to be a live component to this. I think probably because I started in theater and moved into this, but there's a sense of needing a gathering point or needing a moment to share with other people that's so accessible at an event like Nocturne or an event like Nuit Blanche, that sense of loss, especially at the beginning of lockdown, was so overwhelming that it was like, we must be able to push through this, because if it really is done, like what comes next, and what do artists do? And I guess I just think like if we are like reimagining what we want to be doing with these festivals, or just art experiences in general, I think the taking up of space is so important, and giving space over to artists in cities where maybe art is not prioritized in the way it should be, or artists are not prioritized in the way they should be. So we have a role to play in activism in that way as well.
Yeah, and I think it's so incredibly, like, the thing that I probably mourn the most is messing with those public spaces. Like, so,
Absolutely.
to get to like be in the financial district, or, for Ash being in the mall, or do you know what I mean? Like pushing people's imaginations of like what an art installation is supposed to be, and outside of the white cube. And I'm really excited for Thursday, because we're going to talk to mostly museum directors and talking about how their models, I actually think we're going to end up having a very different conversation, because I think some of those models are kind of outdated. And I think that they're going to be looking to how some of us have actually been doing really innovative work for a long period of time pre-COVID. Mm-hmm. and now that they're having to think outside of the white cube, they're going to have to start kind of being innovative. And it doesn't mean that all galleries aren't. I'm just saying that I think that there are pre-existing structures within museology that have been determined for very long periods of time through our kind of Western colonial imperial, trajectory. And so they are locked into those boxes, right? And so whereas for me, some of the things that I find exciting about exhibitions, night festivals, just large scale events, is that there are no norms, you know, like you take up a space in a totally different way. You know, you all of a sudden you're in this back alley and it's lit up or something kind of crazy's happening, and it just shifts how you think about that space. Or, you know, I think about Rebecca Belmore's work and Michael Gray Eyes, where they, you know, took the four corners of the four most capitalist, most richest place in Canada, you know, this financial district center within Toronto. And I think that those are the kinds of opportunities that we don't get, you know, in the kind of traditional ways of working within museums and galleries. And so, you know, I think it's exciting. That is the biggest blow, I think, in terms of thinking about not being able to gather in public space. I know we got a couple of questions coming in on the line, and I can recognize a few of those. And so I do think so one of my last questions will be, you know, what are some of the benefits to this reimagining or shift? And then also to, like, we can think at the same time as a benefit, but we could also talk a little bit about accessibility. And when I'm saying accessibility, I'm talking about people who have access to broadband, internet, mobile devices, all those kinds of things that we're asking people to engage. I know here at my Bush internet, you guys have already did this quite a few times, and we'll just say internet unstable. And, you know, I should have good internet. So I definitely think that I think it's a really important conversation to have. So I don't know who wants to pick it up.
That's something we talked about a lot, actually, when we were trying to construct what the festival would look like, was about, well, if it's a fully virtual festival, like, in one way that seems more accessible, but in a lot of really important ways that seems very limiting. And it seems like very inaccessible, not only for people with not great internet, but also people that don't live their lives on the internet either. And so that was something we really wanted to find a way that we could be a hybrid of. And so having ways that we use online spaces interactively, but also still have some sense of live in-person happenings. And accessibility, like, primarily, it's been a real opportunity for us to really consider what we've been doing in the past, how has it been accessible, where have we dropped the ball in that, but also what other tools do we have at our disposal with being more online, closed captioning, like a better way to do ASL with, because we're a nighttime art festival, it's always been a struggle to figure out where to and how to do ASL correctly in that sense. And so this has also been a good opportunity for us to prioritize that in our budgets and just our planning.
Can I jump in there? There's one, I've been dying to say this when we're talking about value and opportunities. I don't know how many people who live in the Toronto area, but who went to TIFF this year. And when I talk about reimagining and seeing an opening for opportunity, when I think about the real value of what we're going through right now is revitalizing some of our spaces, bringing cultural value to some of our heritage spaces. When I see how they lit up Ontario Place, and how many of us can say before COVID how many times we've been to Ontario Place in the last few years, and it's one of the most beautiful venues that Toronto has on the lakeshore. And when I saw how TIFF, like, yes, they pivoted, but they also reimagined that experience. It was by far the best experience I've had as a TIFF goer to date, and it's because of the structure that they brought to revitalizing some of their spaces. And they moved, and they had about 4 or 5 different locations. They still had TIFF Bell Lightbox, but then this, like, city view and the romanticism of going into, like, a car and going to a drive-through, and then things that I like, seeing a DJ close out this film that was based on female DJs that they never would have done before. You would have ended with your normal Q&A, and we all do that, and it's a great thing, and I love Cameron Bailey and all of that. But there was just this something about that they were like, it's outside and we're in cars and we need to make this even more impactful for people. How do we do it? And where they shifted their budget into making that an even more profound experience for their audience that could still reach the film that I saw. The whole parking lot was full. They were still able to pivot, but the way that they reimagined their festival this year was such a better experience, at least for me, for audience goers. And I think that they capitalized on opportunity. To move outside of just a structural building and to reinvigorate and revitalize spaces in the cities that we weren't going to anymore. So that is a big, that's a big example for me of like seeing value, opportunity, pivoting, and then reimagining. And I think that those are all factors as to why this is like an opportunity for change and to challenge ourselves to build better experiences.
Yeah, for sure. I know I saw some of the romance pictures from there.
You did. You probably saw it on my story.
and I got some, sneak peeks from a few other people just texting, but yes, I did. It looked awesome.
I think there's also something too about part of what work that Nocturne and that the Singapore Festival does, that about sort of the transformation of public space, a bit about what we've been talking about, like that potential also still exists in the virtual realm, like in particular related to the transformation of your own space, right? Like now by bringing the work through your computer to your personal environment, you're transforming your home, you're transforming your backyard, you're transforming your, the place that you live into something different. And you can see this in the same way you see the potential in your city around that transformation. You can see that transformation in your own home, in your own spaces, right? And like, I think we need to think about how people engage in that way with works as well. But I feel also that the idea of the new kind of social stratas that are existing around access, around Wi-Fi, around the need to have a device that can connect and to have data on your phone, like all those things, I think are going to have to address in a larger way. The society will have to address those in a larger way. Like, we could talk about free Wi-Fi in the downtown core until we're blue in the face, but until, we make that a real choice around that and understand that what it means to people who might not necessarily have that access. Like, you see people sitting out in front of the libraries now, they just sit against the wall and use the data or use the Wi-Fi from the libraries because they can, and they don't have it available to them in other places now, right? Like, those are things that we as not necessarily as art events, but as people who practice work in public space can start to really look at what those impacts are in real ways on the people who participate in the work that we produce.
Yeah, and you guys are, you're situated in a dense urban city, like I think a lot about, the force of me having to be on Facebook is because, almost all of the Inuit population has such low broadband width or ability to get online. And so even though we get excited about thinking about opening up, and I will make this argument myself, is, I'm excited about the outreach of how it leaves Toronto and goes out more nationally or more globally. And I think that that's a really exciting aspect, but at the same time, there's challenges there in terms of who has access, what can they do with that, how can that shift? And I think it's a really important kind of conversation for sure. Sage, did you want to go?
Yeah, in terms of the access, that's what we're really thinking about, is like, how do we ensure audiences can be a part of our festival? Because usually they would travel down to the city and they would be a part of it in that way. But we are working with artists who are in Nunavut, who are in Northwest Territories, or even on a reserve 4 hours outside of the city. They just don't have internet. And it's not that it's poor internet, it's the wires literally do not go there. So that's the kind of, like, it's very real, like, how do we provide access to these places? So it really becomes about working with their band offices and community centers and getting groups together to hopefully for them to be able to bring community together. And that's really what IFWTO is about, was that sense of community that all came together. So trying to think on new ways in terms of that, in terms of accessibility, but also what I find interesting about the internet, because not only is it a barrier to some people based on where you're from and financially, But also the internet is so oversaturated. We can go online, like you can literally go on there and you'll just switch through things. So you like creating work, it has to happen fast because people are not going to sit around for a 1 hour's conversation. You know, like, it's really, really difficult to get people's attention span for that length of time. So it's like, how do we like create content for online? And I really liked how Ashley was bringing work from online to being it live at the same time, and like what does that look like? And I really love the AR aspect that you're doing, Julie, and how that brings our experience still into being this live reality. I guess I don't really have, I just have, that's more of a thought to be like, the internet is so oversaturated. We have so much content, more content than we need. And we're all creating more content this year because that's all we can do.
Well, and I think everybody has different challenges given on what event that they're organizing. Because for us at Nuit Blanche, we couldn't even consider a physical event because of the massive amounts of numbers that come out. So, you know, we actually do have a physical project. It's Michael Belmore. It's going to be beautiful and amazing, but like we can't actually bring people to that location, you know, because it's just, it's unsafe, right? And so that's pushed us to have to do different things. And so I'd say that, you know, that's the hard part of trying to figure out some kind of hybrid model, which I think, for my fingers are crossed for 2021, that's what we get to do. Then we get a bit of both of those magics happening, but just we're in a different place, and we can't encourage that, right? And not only are we the City of Toronto, who's actually, you know, communicating those rules out loud to the rest of the public, but it just that the amount of people that could potentially come could put us in a very unsafe situation, right? So it's just so interesting in terms of like trying to balance and think about what those things will be.
Well, necessity breeds innovation. Like that's what I keep on reminding myself. And a lot of our communities have been living in this way for a long time. And it's like, and I'm really starting to see that come to life now, where it's like, we are finding interesting ways to do that.
And I really liked too what Lindsay said right at the beginning. You have to trust artists, right? They're going to come up with ideas and solutions and create things that we couldn't even imagine now, given the opportunities that are available.
Yeah. Sue, did you want to get a few words in there?
Yes, I think just going back to the question of the digital realm and rethinking how the digital can be, I guess, ways to think about new ways to for audiences to access the arts. I think firstly, I think it's important to think of the digital not as a replacement of the live experience, but really as an enhancement of the live experience. And also, like what Julie, you yourself said, is really a chance to really further engage and reach out to new audiences beyond your locale as well. So what the arts practitioners have found and the arts groups have found as well is that, you know, having to engage online during lockdown really meant being able to find new audiences in the region as well, but also reaching out to new audiences as well. So again, coming from a kind of more densely populated city, but also one with very high internet access, a lot of us found that, you know, during engaging with audiences or having to put up digital content during lockdown, is that many people actually consumed art experiences during lockdown because of that comfort level of being able to access the arts in your own home, and also being able to introduce others within your own household easily to the arts as well. So a lot of them, you know, use the arts as a form of conversation over the dinner table as well. And I think this kind of introduction or that kind of easy comfort level of access to the arts cannot be discounted. But of course, I think how sustainable it is, and also how do we ensure that they actually come back, you know, when live performances and experiences are allowed again, because currently live performances are still not allowed in Singapore as well. So I think there's that worry there whether they will come back, but at least now they have a chance to experience the local arts.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just going to be so interesting to think about how different things are going to flex, how different models are going to shift, how we're going to try and do that work. And we don't know yet, right? And it's kind of exciting kind of terrifying too, because I think I'll definitely cry a little bit if 2021 is also not in physical space. But hey, you
Don't
know,
say that out loud.
I know. Well, I don't think that's going to happen. It's my hope, but I don't actually know. None of us will be able to predict. And so I think that, you know, we're moving towards these really kind of beautiful, intricate, amazing abilities in terms of AR, VR, streaming, some kind of engagement in terms of, you know, sound or visual, whether that be performances live then recorded, right? So that we get that opportunity so that we can still engage with arts and culture. And I think that, you know, that was really present in the last few talks is, you know, it gives us connection, it fills us with hope and excitement for the future. And I think that if we don't have that, then you're living in these kind of little, you know, literally we're in the bubbles, but nobody wants to be disconnected while they're in the bubble, right? And I think that that's, you know, really important kind of thinking about it. I want to say Chima Gwich Marcy, thank you for giving your time and energy and your good minds and all your great thoughts. And it's just been such an inspiring conversation and listening to all of you guys. And I just think how lucky we are to kind of get such a range of events and exhibitions that are happening across Canada, but also on the other side of the planet in Singapore. And so I'm really happy to have you guys, and thank you so much for coming and joining us for the Nuit Talks series. I also want to end by saying thank you to our continued support from our partners at the University of Toronto Scarborough, at the Doris. I'm looking at Jeanne and she's just like, you're gonna say it wrong. You say it.
Our premier partners, University of Toronto Scarborough and the Doris McCarthy Gallery.
Yeah, I got in trouble. Like I was like, anyways, it's funny. I do want to say thank you and recognize the support of the province of Ontario Celebrate Program Grant. And of course, to everybody who's joining us. And, you know, you can see we spend a lot of time together. There's lots of jokes and banter there. So thank you so much, everybody. And please join us this Thursday for exhibitions, galleries, and social distancing on October 1st at 8 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.